Welcome to your Daily Dose of Dudley nighttime edition. I realize it looks like I'm just a floating head, but it's because I'm in my car. Back in the parking lot, I went and ate something, used the Wi-Fi for a few minutes, but it still wasn't fast enough to load faster. So let's see if we can knock this out. Okay, we just got a few more pages in this. We're going to get a little more here, figure out if Scrooge can figure out who everybody's talking about dying and who these people didn't care about. Right? Last thing he asked about is he wanted to know, or he wanted to see someone showing some compassion for death. Now notice he didn't say for the death we've been talking about, he just said for death. So, page 69. There we go. A little more light anyway. The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchit were as still as statues in one corner and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard these words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. The color hurts my eyes, she says. The color? Oh, poor Tiny Tim. They're better now again, said Cratchit's wife. It makes them weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home, for the world. It must be near his time. Past it, rather, Peter answered, shutting up his book. But I think he has walked a little slower than he used to, these few evenings, Mother. They were very quiet again. At last she said, in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed. And so have I, cried Peter, often. And so have I, exclaimed another, so had all. But he was very light to carry, she resumed, intent upon her work, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble, no trouble. And there's your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob in his comforter, he had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knee and laid each a child little cheek against his face, as if they said, Don't mind it, father, don't be grieved. Bob was very cheerful with them, and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table, and praised the industry and speed Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. Sunday? You went today, then, Robert? Said his wife. Yes, my dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. You'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child, cried Bob, my little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. He left the room and went upstairs into the room above, which was lighted cheerfully and hung with Christmas. There was a chair set close beside the child, and there were signs of someone having been there lately. Poor Bob sat down in it, and when he had thought a little and composed himself, he kissed the little face. He was reconciled to what had happened, and went down again quite happy. So he's gone in. Tiny Tim's body is laying upstairs, and this is before you would have had funeral homes and stuff. So Bob went up to see dead Tiny Tim, kissed him on the cheek. If you didn't understand what he was talking to his wife about, he's gone and made the funeral arrangements and found a grave site. That's why he's talking about it. It's so green, it'll be beautiful. I wish you could see it. They drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew. This is in your homework, okay? The extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, who he had scarcely seen but once, and who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked just a little down, you know, said Bob, inquired what had happened to distress him. On which, said Bob, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you have ever heard, I told him, I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said, and heartily sorry for your good wife. By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know. Knew what, my dear? Why, that you were a good wife, replied Bob. Everybody knows that, said Peter. Very well observed, my boy, cried Bob. I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, for your good wife. It can be of service to you in any way, he said, giving me his card. That's where I live. Pray come to meet me. Now, it wasn't, cried Bob, for the sake of anything might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us. I'm sure he's a good soul, said Mrs. Cratchit. You'd be sure of it, my dear, returned Bob, if you saw and spoke with him. I shouldn't be at all surprised. Mark what I say. If he got Peter a better situation... Only hear that, Peter, said Mrs. Cratchit. And then, cried one of the girls, Peter will be keeping company with someone and setting up for himself. Get along with you, retorted Peter, grinning. It's just as likely as not, said Bob. One of these days, though, there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however and whenever we part from one another, I'm sure we shall none of us ever forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or his first parting that there was among us? Never, father, cried they all. And I know, said Bob, I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was little child, we shall not quarrel easily among ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it. No, never, father, they all cried again. I'm very happy, said little Bob. I'm very happy. Mrs. Cratchit kissed him. His daughters kissed him, the two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what man was that whom we saw lying dead? The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him, as before, though at a different time. He thought, indeed, there seemed no order in these later visions, save that they were in the future, and to the resorts of business men, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on, as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment. So he's kind of going through like this, showing me these things in random order, and showing me people, and taking me places, and I don't know what's happening. The court, said Scrooge, so there's somewhere he recognizes. The which we hurry now is where my place of occupation is, where my office is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in days to come. So he wants to go to his office and look in the window and see himself. He wants to see what he became. The spirit stopped. The hand pointed elsewhere. The house is yonder, Scrooge exclaimed. Why do you point that way? The inexorable finger underwent no change. Scrooge hastened to the window of the office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed at as before. He joined it once again in wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused, looking around before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. So churchyards used to be where cemeteries would be. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite. A worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced toward it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw new meaning in its solemn shape. Before I draw near to that stone to which you point, said Scrooge, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which it persevered in. They must lead, said Scrooge. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me. So Scrooge is like, can this stuff be changed? The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I the man who lay upon the bed? He cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. No, spirit, oh no! The finger was still there. Spirit, he cried, tight clutching at its robe. Hear me, I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why, show me this. I am past all hope. For the first time the hand appeared to shake. Good spirit, he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The kind hand trembled. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony he caught the spectral's hand. It sought to free itself, and he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hand in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled into a bedpost. And that's the end of stave 5. So, quickly, thinking back, he asked the ghost, can this stuff be changed? He didn't really get an answer, but is this what is definitely going to happen, or can it change? And then at the end there, he begs, I will keep Christmas all year round. Just let me have a chance to change this. Okay? So hopefully that's enough to get you there. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed your Daily Dose of Dudley Car Edition and Car Night Edition. Bye now.